Shaq to do what? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Protect Our Queens podcast presented by the Give Us a Shot Network. With me, as always, my partner in women's basketball crime, my brother in Christ, Martin Soares of Basketball Society. My guy, how we feeling?
Feeling good, feeling great. Another great night to discuss some women's basketball.
Yeah.
Good to be here with you, my friend. Yeah, we wrapped up the WNBA season last week. That was a lot of fun. Historic times. Still got some WNBA stuff to get into and discuss. But yeah, getting ready for college now, and yeah, man, feeling good. Getting ready for. I mean, this is what most people call basketball season that we're getting ready to go into. But you know, with college and obviously NBA is back. But yeah, I mean, we've got more women's basketball stuff to add into this crop of basketball season over the next few months. Unrivaled is starting in January, and expansion draft, WNBA lottery. You know, it's a lot of stuff going on. Basketball never stops. It's one of the things I love about this sport. It's truly year round. So yeah, man, we got some good stuff to talk about tonight. What do we got going on?
We do. We got a couple of things we're going to talk about. Shaq made an appearance on Angel Reese's podcast, Unapologetically Angel. Said some things that are a little questionable, so we're going to react to that. There's been a lot of moving around in the WNBA as it relates to head coaches. As it stands right now, there are 7 vacant spots at the head coaching position. For point of reference, there are 12 teams in the WNBA. So more than half the league is without a head coach right now. And then as Martin mentioned, the women's college season starts up on Monday. We are just about 5 days away from the beginning of college. And so Martin and I are going to talk about some things that might not be being tracked by the masses for this season, but it's definitely 3 things that he and I are going to be looking forward to paying attention to and talking about over the course of the college season. Before we get into the show, you referenced it. Unrivaled has announced 2 more players, both of whom are rookies. Kate Martin of the Las Vegas Aces and Aaliyah Edwards of the Washington Mystics are players 27 and 28. Joining the Unrivaled group means only 2 more players to join, but all 4 rookies are set in stone there. So that's pretty exciting. Got 2 more players left, and then we are full steam ahead to Miami, brother.
Yeah, man. They're trying to get Kate Martin's best friend on board. We'll see what happens with that.
We'll see.
We will see what happens with that. Those last 2 spots, but yeah, Unrivaled is going to be pretty dope, man. I think that's going to be cool.
I can't imagine who they like. They have so many heavy hitters already through 1 through 20, and I'm trying to think of like these last 2 spots who they could add that's not there already. That would just be like the icing on the cake at this point. I can't think of really think of anybody who's missing that I would want to see there off the top of my head right now. But
only one name comes to mind for me right now.
Who is that?
Kate Martin's best friend. And they've put the feelers out there. We'll see what happens, man. That's gonna be interesting. That would certainly be some heavy icing on that cake.
I don't know if I can sit through another full season of women's basketball with toxicity. I don't know. I don't know if I can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think it might be interesting to see her in that setting. And, give people a different format to kind of consume that. And I mean, you're going to get some of that still, of course, but but people, you know, a lot of us kind of have to get used to that now. But it would be cool. I would love to see it for the basketball sake, especially to see her alongside like that league. Just seems like it's all, I mean, there's just no drop offs. It seems like, not to say everybody is like a superstar in that league, but it's going to be high quality basketball across the board. So, and obviously that would only bring more attention to it, of course. But
that's a good point. That's a good point. For what it's worth, Caitlin Clark does bring a lot of eyes everywhere she goes. So That is fair. Are you ready to get into the show for the night, brother?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's go.
All right, let's do it.
Protect our queens.
No matter what it takes, we must protect our queen.
I mean, I just love playing the game. It's fun.
I'm reacting on what the defender does.
I hit them with a hezzy. After that, they quit.
Yeah, I think I've always just been able to get downhill, so I've sort of prided myself on that.
I know what I'm doing. Like, people can't tell me I'm not doing the right, like, I've been taught the right way.
All right. So if you're new to Protect Our Queens, if you've been here for the entire year and some change that we've been doing this, one thing is that number one, if you don't like women's basketball, this is not the place for you. But also, Martin and I pride ourselves, whether it's on the show, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Instagram, we pride ourselves on doing something that Martin likes to call trolling the trolls. And unfortunately, the next troll that we have to kind of address and have to deal with is one Shaquille O'Neal. So as I mentioned in the intro, Shaq was on Angel's podcast, Unapologetically Angel, not too long ago. And this is what he had to say.
Let me explain why I came up with this solution first. In women's beach volleyball, let's just say that the net is 10. For women, it's lower just a little bit. I'm not saying lower it to 9, 5, 9, 6, but just 9, 9.
Just so we can dunk?
Yes. No, see? And
I hate when men say that.
But listen, that's the only difference.
We start dunking, then what?
Watch. We got shooters. Y'all got shooters. Oh, guys got some handles. Girls got some handles. Oh, we got this. We got that. Oh, we got talkers. Oh, we got brawls. Only thing is missing is the dunk.
I don't feel like it still would change.
I'm telling you.
I don't think
what?
so.
Bro, you dunking and getting, man, trust me, it'll change. Trust me, it'll change. I'm telling you right.
So.
Bro, I'm telling you now, if you load that thing to 99999.
And what's going to happen? All right, tell me, the money going to go through the roof?
Yeah.
What you think, we finna make meals?
Yes.
What kind of meals?
Send them out. I'm telling you.
200 mil contracts? 100 mils? No, absolutely not.
So we didn't put it in the clip, but after that, to further prove his point, Shaq referenced an outfit that Angel Reese wore in Chicago when Wild 'N Out was on tour in Chicago. And he said, just imagine you, referring to Angel, dunking in those little shorts and how much attention that would garner. And that made Angel Reese very uncomfortable. There are two specific issues that we need to address, one of which we tackled very early on. It is this idea that if the rims were lowered for women's basketball, more people would tune in. I feel like that coming from Shaq is worse than it coming from just a random person on the internet, no?
Yeah, I mean, he's been standing on that for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, the clip that people have seen from this, that's been going around is him talking about the shorts on Wild 'N Out. And how she more people would be watching if she was dunking in the shorts. So then it became less about the lowering the rims and more about how inappropriate that comment was. But yeah, the clip, I feel like they're trying to get the clip off the internet because it was so embarrassing and it was really like not a good look for him because the clip is out there, but we didn't have it in there. You didn't see it or hear it because it's like the only one that exists is like a weird version on Twitter.
Yeah,
so
really
but we've all seen,
someone else recorded it.
Yeah. It was just a weird, distorted version. So that's why it wasn't in there. But yeah, I just think I think it's unfortunate. I do think that like someone like Shaq is just like when it comes to the dunking stuff, like he's biased because he believes in the power of dunking the basketball and the entertainment factor of dunking the basketball. And he's not wrong when it comes to that. But I more so agree with Angel with her pushback when it comes to the fact that, and I've said it when we've talked about the lowering the rims on here before, like people are they're not going to be dunking that much more for it to even become a thing. There will also, even as Angel was saying, like people are still going to complain about something, even if it's the fact that they'll probably start pointing out the fact that the rims are lowered anyway. they'll find a way to discredit it and disrespect it anyway. So I don't think that's as much of a solution as Shaq has been proposing for a while now. But yeah, the part about the shorts and more people watching, even with that, like, unfortunately, Shaq has a point about that. The kind of culture we live in, he has a point, and he might be right. He might be right about that, but I'm just shocked. I'm not shocked that he could say it and get away with it, because the culture we live in, it's Shaq.
Yeah.
Kind of personality he is. I think, listen, he's saying this on Angel's podcast is on his network. It's hard to like go at him hard as like a non-advocate or somebody who doesn't support when he's literally talking on the show on his network, and we know the kind of support that he's given Angel. But that's what also makes it even more unfortunate and inappropriate, because it's like, and that's where a lot of people are disappointed in Shaq, for the fact that he's sitting across from her and making a comment like that, trying to make a point, but just taking it too far, where it's like, yo, I'm not doing that. Like, I wouldn't do that. And I think that's the big thing I took away from this, was like, it's unfortunate because Shaq is doing something to women, to Black women, that they keep saying like, yo, y'all keep doing this to us and putting us in these weird, awkward, situations and conversations where we have to compromise ourselves for more views or for more traffic. When you think that, and on the other side, like, we talk about selling out and would you do this for the man, or would you do this just for a bag or whatever? And some people may call Shaq a sellout in certain cases for things that he does with Taco Bell or with the different brands that he does or whatever. I mean, at some point, people may have called him that, and maybe he didn't care, because it's like, yo, I'm out here making business moves. I'm getting a bag. Like, I'm doing what's best for me. But the situation, the scenario that he painted of Duncan in little shorts and stuff, like, come on, bro. Like, I get the point you're trying to make. I get that you're biased and you're Shaq and that's just you, but like that, he clearly crossed the line. Like, that was just, that's not it. Like, that's not it to say that's what you should just be. You should just consider doing that because more people are going to watch. It's like, bro, really? Like, well, if you go out here, if you strip naked on your podcast and start playing Hangman or something crazy on your show, you probably get double the views too. Doesn't mean you gonna start.
Does not mean you should do that.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm shocked he crossed that line, and I'm not shocked he's gonna get away with it. But that was crazy.
It's not shocking that he crossed the line, or it's not shocking that he's gonna get with it. It is a little bit shocking that he crossed the line. If you go to Twitter, saw some tweets. This one says, the saddest realization ever is when you get around a man thinking he might be different, only to realize that he's just a man. I feel so sorry for Angel Reese, because Shaq was really one of her that should be role models. I can imagine that he's just a regular dude to her now. It is unfortunate, right? One of the things that we talked about a couple weeks ago, as it relates to just like the discourse around like certain Black players of, like, Dejounte Carrington and Alyssa Smith, and that whole tirade I went on as it related to the racism and the sheer like unprecedented nature of the racism that a lot of WNBA players have faced this season. One of the things I said in my little rant on the show was that, Black women are the most underappreciated and unprotected community in the country. And it is our role as Black men, especially, to pour into them and invest time into them and protect them and stand up for them the way that they do us. And this, unfortunately, is just yet another instance of a Black man not doing that. Right. Like, when you think about Angel Reese and you think about how at the end of her college season last season, when she's doing her exit interview after the Final Four loss to Iowa, and how she openly admitted to and broke down crying about the fact that she has been, sexualized and victimized, and how she's repeatedly mentioned how much of a pain that has been for her and how tough that experience has been for someone who's supposed to be a mentor to her, like a unk to her or whatever, to then come on her show and just provide another instance of her being sexualized has to be a very uncomfortable, disheartening and discouraging experience for her. And you could kind of hear it in her voice, how like immediately dismissive she was. She even said Shaq was trying to get the point across, and she was like, I don't want to imagine. I don't want to imagine that, because she doesn't have to, right? No woman, black or white or whatever, but like no woman should be subjected to being sexualized, over sexualized just because they're attractive and they wear certain types of clothes, right? Like Angel Reese should not be put in a position where she has to think about the views that she would get if she put on some real tiny shorts and went up and dunked a basketball, right? Like she shouldn't have to be subjected to that. So to this point, it is unfortunate. It is very unfortunate for Angel.
Yeah, I wonder how Shaq would feel about somebody saying that his daughter who plays basketball should be
That's
wearing
another
those
great
shorts
point.
if they lowered the
Yeah.
rim. Like how would he feel? How does he feel about that? Is it, oh yeah, you need to be doing that too because they're doing it? Like, I mean, come on, like what are we doing?
Another tweet just says Angel Reese learned a painful lesson about men through Shaq in real time, I fear. Yeah.
And honestly, here's the thing, that kind of language, that kind of rhetoric, the way that he said it, that was unk language. Like that's how he can talk to her in private, at home, on the phone, like between the two of them. That's why she's on there like, oh my God, like, oh my, like you really about to go here. Cause it's like she may have heard him say something like that in private, and it's like, come on, like you really about to say that here, like that. I mean, so I don't know if it has an effect where I'm sure she's disappointed that he said that publicly and kind of embarrassed her a little bit. But again, I don't know if she's like looking at him differently, because he probably talks like that in private and kind of dresses it up as, like, I'm just looking out for you. Hey, I'm not trying to say, I'm just, just sometimes it's like a joke. It's kind of funny or whatever. But, in this case, he was pretty serious. Like it came off
pretty serious
as a semi joke, but he's also like, nah, I mean, what I'm saying, if you did that, you would imagine how much more people would be watching. But that's like, again, that can't be the bottom line.
No.
Like,
and it shouldn't be the bottom line. And then last one, this is a bit long, but I thought it was interesting. Messed around and saw the Angel Reese and Shaq clip, and it triggered the hell out of me. Such a heartbreaking experience for a woman when a man you thought was safe, different, says or does something that makes you realize they aren't. I hope she's all right for real. And how about the blatant disrespect of her clear communication of her boundaries? I don't want to hear that. And other statements telling him to stop talking. And he was adamant to continue. Not only are you sexualizing her, but you don't care if it's making her uncomfortable. Again, it's just a really unfortunate thing. And again, I think what makes it even more unfortunate is you talk about someone like Shaquille O'Neal, who, on his podcast during March Madness was like very adamant about the fact that like he was only watching the women's side of the tournament because it was more interesting to him. Like he's certainly been in many instances a champion for women's sports, specifically women's basketball. Obviously, you mentioned his daughter who plays women's basketball. I believe she plays for Florida, I think. Great friends with Candace Parker, who's an all-time great. You have this mentoring relationship with Angel Reese. Seemed to be one of the very few people in Angel's corner when it seemed like the entire world was against her in some instances. For this to come up is certainly an unfortunate situation. Just peeking through the comments real quick. One person said Shaq is not protecting no queens. In this instance, that is true. He was not protecting any queens in this instance. And then Marina Scott said, Shaq got an agenda and it's shady about her body, made me uncomfortable. I think it made a lot of people uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. It's weird. It's awkward. And it's like, again, and listen, Shaq has his own personal history and things with women. Nothing like crazy or like abusive or something that I know of, but just more so like Shaq is known to be like a wild dude. Like he's been with different women, he's been divorced and all that. Like he's had some questionable decisions and circumstances when it comes to women. So the way that agenda and just the way he like, I don't know. Like I don't. It's weird. It's weird. And like you said, to the point that you made, whether he intended to or not, he feeds into those people who make those kind of like stupid objectifying comments about her. And no matter what his intention was, because again, when I watch it and listen to it, I still hear just like an uncle who talks that way at home at the barbecue, or when it's usually just you and me. Like it's probably like it wasn't like so. I mean, it felt inappropriate for that setting, but like, again, it's Shaq. Like, imagine, how many times has anyone ever told, especially Shaq, knowing like just how goofy and like
Yeah.
silly he can be, and how, you know, like he says what he says and he means it. He's like, yo, I'm gonna say it. This is what I think, you know, and few people can probably tell him like, nah, don't say that. No, that's inappropriate, because he usually doesn't go. He's not known to like go too far or cross the line. But yeah, I think that was just too bad, because he's feeding into people that continue to make comments like that, and they feel more justified by it because Big Shaq is saying it. And I'll say this lastly, Kobe would be disappointed, bro.
100%.
Kobe would be disappointed in you, bro, and you know that. Like that was not it. That was not it.
Kobe would definitely be disappointed in that for sure. It's unfortunate though.
And that is a shame.
And that is a shame. Let's switch gears now. Let's talk a little bit about some head coaching vacancies. There's a lot of stuff going on, as I mentioned earlier, in the WNBA as it relates to the head coaching. I'm going to toss it to a clip of us kind of talking about some of those head coaches, and we'll come back and react.
And I'm interested to see what names. I've seen Katie Smith's name floating out there, possibly for LA. People have been talking about Spoon in LA. I don't think that's where they're going. They probably have their sights set on somebody. I saw Katie Smith out there. But it's going to be interesting what crop of coaches are about to, because it feels like, you know, again, in Phoenix, they brought in an outsider. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how the coaching carousel starts to develop in the W.
As I mentioned at the top of the show, 7 of 12 teams currently do not have a head coach. Starting with the biggest one probably is Christy Sides is no longer the head coach in Indiana. It was assumed before this firing that would be the case, and it was assumed that Stephanie White would come and be the head coach in Indiana. And then earlier yesterday, Stephanie White was fired, or they parted ways from Connecticut. So it's looking like, I would say, within the next 24, 36, 48 hours at the latest, we will get that announcement that Stephanie White is returning to Indiana to be the head coach there. Martin, two things. Let's first talk about the Christy Sides component of this. In a vacuum, if we just take the Stephanie White component out of this and the potential of her coming into Indiana, do you think that Christy Sides did a good job in Indiana in the 2 years that she was there?
I think she did. I think she did what she tweeted, that she left it better than she found it. And of course, she had 2 number 1 picks to work with.
Yep.
Obviously, one really made a huge impact this year. Based on what I saw, and I watched them more this year than I did last year. Admittedly, I watched them a good amount last year, but for her to transition into the most popular player maybe ever, and a style of play in a player that the kind of style that the kind of player like Caitlin brings, and having to adjust to that, I thought the change in Indiana's offense and their style of play after the Olympic break had as much to do with what Christy Sides was doing with the team offensively as it did Caitlin getting used to the league. I saw things that they were doing offensively that I thought had very much to do with coaching, in terms of their pace obviously got better. I know she got criticized for not like putting the ball in Caitlin's hands early enough in the season. I thought the ball was in her hands enough. But they did have more of an emphasis on playing Caitlin's style, pushing the pace, pushing the ball, and playing more to her strengths. And I thought I gave that credit to Christy Sides. So I thought she was doing fine. I thought she would have done fine. The only way I could see this justified is if they get a coach like Stephanie White, who's just obviously a little more experienced right now. And that might make more sense for what they're trying to do going forward.
So and it's on record, it's on the show, I was very hard on Christy Sides. I don't think Christy Sides is a bad coach. I do want to make that clear. I think, you know, with the 2 years that she had, what she was able to accomplish in 2 years, I thought I didn't think like she was bad. I think my big thing is when you look at last season, so Aaliyah Boston's rookie season, I think the one thing for me that stuck out is just, and I don't know if this was an intentional decision or if this was just a flow of the game thing, because of how much it happened, it felt like more of just like an intentional thing. The unwillingness in many moments down the stretch of last season to not put the ball in Aaliyah Boston's hands, especially in instances and in games when she was like hot and rolling and really causing issues for the opposing team. That's the part that really stuck out to me. Because even down the stretch of last season, like they finished with a losing record, yes, but there were so many games you can point to where if Aaliyah Boston is continuing to contribute throughout the course of the game in the offense by getting those touches, their season last season might have turned out differently. Not saying that they're a playoff team last season, but it certainly could have turned out differently. When you move over to this season, I still think I think at least in the first part of the season, we saw a little bit of that. Now, I get that the beginning part of the season was particularly grueling. I think they had more back-to-backs before the All-Star break than any other team had. They were kind of thrown into the gauntlet, and whether you want to say that's because Caitlin Clark is there and they wanted to get her in those big markets like Vegas and New York earlier in the season to ensure that more eyes would come in and then follow. Or if you want to just say that that's just how it happened, like either way, I do still think that there were instances in the first half of the season where I think there were some questionable decisions made, whether it's just, the handling of certain fourth quarters, the handling of Aaliyah Boston still, I think in the beginning of in the first half of the season wasn't all that great. Reminded me a bit of how it was last season. You and I talk about that on the show. And I think on top of that, throughout the course of the season, and this might not be a Christie Sides specific thing, but I don't really know who else we can really look at. Maybe look at the GM, but I don't know. Like the handling of NaLyssa Smith this season as well offensively and how she was not impactful this season. That to me is a black mark on Christie Sides as well, because NaLyssa Smith had great games. Like in the early parts of the season, she was very impactful. She played well. I thought she could have played even better this season if she would have been factored into game planning and factored into the offense a little bit more. Obviously, I don't know if that was an intentional thing or not, but I don't think there was ever an instance where you look at NaLyssa Smith's lack of production and say it's because, she was having an off night or because she hadn't earned it. Like there were so many moments throughout the course of the season for the Fever this year where you look at her and you say, wow, like she's having a great game, or she had a great game, and you come back the next game and it's like minimal impact for no reason other than she's not getting enough touches. I think there's a lot of inconsistency there. And I think that is what's fueling some of the friction and some of the strife that NaLyssa Smith seems to be feeling and having and going through with the organization right now. If I'm not mistaken, she's at the end of her rookie contract net right now, I think. I don't know if she has another year or not, but I don't know what the future holds for NaLyssa Smith as far as whether she's in Indiana or not. And I think a lot of it has to do with the inconsistency in which she was involved with the game plan. So like those are really the two things for me that stuck out from Christie Sides' 2 years in Indiana. Again, I gave her a lot of slack throughout the course of the season. Just kind of said she is still only a second-year coach. Like everything about this team was young. Everything about this team needed to figure out. But between the way that Aaliyah Boston was kind of handled throughout the course of last season, combined with the way that NaLyssa Smith was handled throughout the course of this season, those are really the two things for me that stuck out, where I don't know if I would say Christie Sides did a great job with Indiana, but I'm not going to say that she did terrible either, right? Like they were a playoff team this season, and rightfully so. And a lot of it has to do with her ability to recognize we have a superstar coming in Caitlin Clark that plays a certain way, and let's figure out how we can ease that learning curve for her and ease that adjustment by molding our team to what it needs to look like so that Caitlin Clark can succeed. That I will give her credit for.
Yeah. And I'll say this, like, this is always a thing with a coach that gets fired that has a star player with this much influence.
Yeah.
Not putting any blame on Caitlin Clark, but at the end of the day, if the star player has that strong of an attachment, I mean, look, we saw Teresa Weatherspoon get let go, and we know how close she was with Angel. So
yeah,
who knows right now? I mean, I would say in Indiana, when you look at Caitlin, she's someone who could easily speak up, and everyone from the owner to the GM is going to listen. If she vouched for Christie Sides that heavily, and not saying that she didn't or that she wanted her gone, but if she believed in Christie Sides that much, I don't believe she's out of there. Like, I believe that if she really enjoyed playing for Christie and really believed in her and wanted to keep going with her, then she would still be there, because she holds that much weight. And I thought that it might have made sense to let a young coach grow with your young superstar. But like I said, I understand the mentality of maybe wanting to get a more experienced coach, because I'm with you on the NaLyssa Smith thing. That's an example of, because I used to talk about how Indiana had a big four, including NaLyssa Smith. And suddenly, just by adding Caitlin, obviously she brings a lot of talent, but you had a lot of talent there already, and figuring out how that, and as I talked about on the show during the season, like that big four was very like you really had to figure out how to work with those four because they're different styles, different kind of players. They can work because they're different positions. They do different things. Like Nalissa's different from Aaliyah. Kelsey Mitchell is different from Caitlin, right? Caitlin and Aaliyah can do things together. Nalissa and Kate, like you can, but that takes high level figuring out and coaching and experience. So if you have experience dealing with like different kinds of talent, like a Stephanie White, that may be more of what they feel like they need. And I would understand that. Last quick, interesting point that I did see, shout out to ESPN for this fact. So the 6 number 1 picks who have won MVP, it's Diana, Stewie, Nneka, Candace Parker, Maya, Lauren Jackson. Out of the 6, 4 of them won their first title with their second coach. Four out of the 6 number 1 picks who have won MVP, they won their first title with their second full-time coach. So you think about Caitlin, who obviously hasn't won an MVP yet, but you assume she probably will. But being a number 1 pick, going now to her second coach, I think that shows that that's going to matter who that second coach is for sure. And it goes without saying, because they're going to want to bring in somebody who's going to be there like for the foreseeable future. Because Indiana's gone through several coaches since Lynn Dunn left. They've been through like I think 3 head coaches now. Yeah. So it's time to find some stability with your superstar player.
Here's my concern with the Stephanie White thing, and I want to acknowledge one. I think Stephanie White's a great coach. Obviously, she was coach of the year last season. And I think she'll do great in Indiana. Here's my one concern, though. I don't know if Indiana's ready to compete for a championship right now. And I feel like the move to get Stephanie White is almost accelerating that just a little bit.
Well, it's the hope that it'll accelerate.
And that's the hope, right? But so what I mean by that is, like, obviously you go get Stephanie White because you want to get to that place where this team can start competing for championships, and they have the talent, right? They 100% have the talent to do that. But I feel like that's going to add a lot more pressure onto what is still a very young basketball team. Like, this is still a young team that still has things I think that need to be figured out. And I don't know if taking someone like Stephanie White, who has she won a championship as an assistant coach on this staff when Indiana won their championship all those years ago. She was the head coach of a team in Connecticut who was a perennial championship contender the past couple seasons, right? That's one of the big things we talk about with Connecticut. Bringing Stephanie White here, while it makes sense if you're looking to accelerate things a little bit, it also, I think, makes the risk and like the downfall potentially that much greater if things don't go the way you want them to, right? I think about the New York Liberty in that instance. Like, the Liberty clearly last offseason, when they went out and they got Slew and they got Stewie and they brought in John Cole, like, they went all in on winning a championship, so much so that you and I had a conversation as we were kind of approaching the finals, even, of like, what happens if the Liberty don't win a championship this season, considering the age of these players that they brought in and where they're at right now? Like, do you blow it up? Do we have a scenario where you still have Stewie and Jonquel and Sabrina and all these players on this team next season with Sandy Brondello as the head coach? Like, I feel like, in a way, I do want to acknowledge Indiana is protected from that, obviously, because Aaliyah Boston's not going anywhere. Caitlin Clark's not going anywhere, right? You other players on this team aren't going anywhere. I think Kelsey Mitchell's a free agent this year. Like, she might come back, she might not. As I mentioned earlier, there's some strife, some friction there with the Nalissa Smith situation. If I'm not mistaken, Erica Wheeler's been here her entire career. I don't think she'll go anywhere anytime soon either. But it's
not her whole career. She hasn't
not her whole career. She's been there for quite some time, though. I think it's just something for me that I'm looking at, and I'm like, I think Stephanie White would be great in Indiana. I just don't know if Indiana's ready for that move yet. Like, to me, this is a move you make after Caitlin's second season, when this team gets out of the first round and they fall just short of the finals. And then you say, okay, now we're going to go all in and get our coach that can take us to the championship. Because right now, they can have Stephanie White and they not make it out of the first round again next season. And then there's still things that need to be figured out. I just feel like this is kind of like how you felt, how you and I talk about how you were 1 year early on the Liberty. It felt like, I feel like the Stephanie White move to Indiana might be 1 year too early.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not like it's going to be a 1-year deal. It's going to be like
Right, of
it
course.
should be like a 5-year deal or so. It's
Yeah.
going to be like it's because they are still a project. I don't think you
Yeah.
treat it like expectations do start to change when you have that level of a coach, but it's not going to be like it's not like all they need is a championship level coach and they're going to be a championship team. They still have growing to do as a roster and as a team, and they still go as Caitlin goes. As I've said, I think she's going to come in year 2 flame throwing. I think she's going to look. I mean, they put out that video the other day of her hitting 25 threes in a row. She's in the gym already. I think she's coming back in year 2, ready to compete, ready to lead a championship competing basketball team. So you give them a coach that knows how to win already in this league, that only increases their chances and increases their expectations. So there will be a little more of an expectation, but those of us who can be realistic can still look at them and say, okay, they do look better now. They look a little stronger. They look better coached or whatever. You know, we'll see how much better they look under Stephanie White. But I don't think anyone can just flat out say, oh, if they get Stephanie White, they're winning the title. Like, expectations change for them to maybe be better, and we'll see what that looks like. Because again, I thought they were doing just fine. Christy Sides was coach of the month in August. That was 2 months ago, and she was the first coach of the month in Indiana Fever history. So I think she would have been doing just fine growing with this team. I do think it'll be interesting to see how a coach like Stephanie White can change and evolve the dynamics of this team in year 1, year 2, whatever. But that it's still gonna be a project. I mean, your point is noted, but I think that's what they want. They know what they have. Championship potential caliber team. They want a championship potential caliber coach. So in that sense, I totally get it.
That's fair. Let's go back to Twitter real quick. Obviously, you alluded to the tweet that Christy Sides tweeted where she said, "Leave it better than you found it." Tamika Catchings, Indiana Fever Letter just says, Christy Sides, I'm so proud of you for a heck of a season and getting the Fever back to the playoffs. You came, you achieved, and I know the best is yet to come. Never easy, but keep shining. Temporary roadblock for future success. Hashtag you got this. Hashtag claim it. This is something I didn't know, and this stuck me for a second. There has been one head coach in WNBA history that has earned the first overall pick and reached the playoffs in the same season and then been fired. It's Christy Sides. She's the only one. And so to your point, like there was obviously the need for Christy Sides to grow with this team as this team grew, which is why I think that this was a year too early, because Christy Sides comes back and they, take that next step, and Christy Sides continues to grow as a head coach, grow with this roster. There's no need for her to be fired because she's continuing along that path of growth and that learning curve with Caitlin, right? We talked a lot about Caitlin's learning curve to the league, but you and I also acknowledge on the show that there also needs to be a learning curve for the other members of the Indiana Fever players and coaching staff for Caitlin Clark. And as you mentioned, post All-Star break and Olympic break, we saw that things were starting to click. That's why Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell were arguably the best backcourt in basketball post-Olympic break. That's why Kelsey Mitchell was averaging all those points. That's why Aaliyah Boston led the league in assists on three-pointers post-All-Star break. That's why Caitlin Clark came out of the All-Star break and Olympic break on an absolute heater, because they figured out what was working for them and they did more of that. And that's ultimately what got them into the postseason. That's why I said it's a year early. You give them one more year, a full off-season together where Caitlin's rested, really working. This team is really in the gym, getting together, building that chemistry. Who knows? Like, they could have made a run for it next year. Not a championship, maybe, but they would have done a lot better, I think, in the postseason next season than they did this season. And there's no need to have the conversations of, well, what if Stephanie White becomes available, because you've got a coach in Christy Sides who's figured out what works for this team. I think not giving Christy Sides the ability to grow with this team continually, if for some reason Indiana doesn't win a championship in the potential Stephanie White era, I think they might look back on this moment when they fired Christy Sides and potentially regret it.
Well, they will if they're not making the playoffs. I mean, if they're getting to the finals, it's one thing to say not winning a championship, but context matters. I mean, if they're not getting to the playoffs, that's one thing. But if they're not winning a championship, but getting to the finals or getting to the semifinals or whatever, it'll feel more justified. But I hear you. I think that's exact. I think they're welcoming new and higher expectations for themselves. Yeah. And maybe they are fast tracking it a little bit, but they see what they have. They know what they have. There's no time to waste when you have that player right now. So I did think Christy Sides was doing fine. I don't know how much better they'll be with like a coach like Stephanie White. I thought they would have looked better anyway next year, even with Christy Sides. But
yeah,
I am interested to see how that has an effect on how this team looks with a different coach. I mean, it's like all roads seem to be pointing to Stephanie White. I don't know if I said coach of the year earlier, but she was coach of the month in August. I don't know if I said coach of the year.
No, yeah, you said coach of
the month. Yeah,
she was coach of the month. Yeah. This, I mean, Rachel Galligan, again, just kind of confirming nothing's been made official. Multiple sources expect White, who's still in the contact with the Sun, to be the Fever's next coach. Obviously, this was tweeted before the news broke earlier yesterday that Stephanie White has since parted ways with the Connecticut Sun. So again, we're all just kind of waiting for that announcement that says that Stephanie White is going to be the new head coach of the Indiana Fever.
Yeah, and most people just assume it's happening because she has said such great things about Caitlin in the past. Like, and of course, she played for the Indiana Fever as well.
She did,
but people are really driving all her glowing comments about Caitlin. I think Caitlin has said nice stuff about her too. So
sure,
it's like people think that this is inevitable.
Yeah. Let's open the scope up a bit though, because as I mentioned, there are still 6 other head coaching vacancies in the WNBA right now. You've got a head coaching vacancy in DC. You have one in LA. You've got one in Atlanta. There's one in Dallas, also Chicago. And of course, the one now, the newest one, is in Connecticut, not including the 2 teams that have not hired their head coach yet because they're expansion teams, Toronto and Portland, who will likely see that as next season comes through. We're looking at still 6 other teams without a head coach. The question's been going on Twitter about whether or not this is going to be the same old coach carousel that you kind of referenced in that clip of these coaches are going to be swapping jobs and swapping places, or as Ari Chambers put it, is this going to be the opportunity where the WNBA looks to former WNBA players and gives them a crack at these positions? What do you think? Do you think it's more likely that we see some former WNBA players take on these roles, or do you think we're going to look at all these coaches who don't have jobs and they're going to find a job elsewhere in the league?
The only former player whose name I've seen out there for potentially one of these gigs or a coaching job who hasn't been coaching, and I don't know if any of them have expressed interest in coaching, but the only name I've seen out there that people have been floating around for LA obviously is Lisa Leslie. She's been coaching in the Big Three. She has, stayed close to the league and whatnot. But again, I don't know if she has interest in coaching the W. That would be a dope story for the Sparks.
Yeah.
I put Sue Bird's name down. I think she could have a JJ Redick kind of moment because she's doing the podcasting and the media, and she's clearly very much still invested in the game. The way she talks about it, she's still studying it. She's a point guard. She has that kind of coach's mind, like a Becky Hammond type. But again, I don't know if she has expressed any interest in actually coaching. So those are the only 2 former players that I have written down that came to mind that I thought maybe could be interesting coaching candidates. So I don't know. I don't know where that conversation has been going as far as like former players that are not currently coaching.
That makes sense. I think it's likely that we're going to see a couple of these coaches who were just recently fired find a new home within the league, and then the rest kind of figures it out. I think Teresa Weatherspoon was kind of the first one that really shocked all of us, that firing in Chicago after just one season. You and I kind of talk about this offline. I don't know if we ever addressed it on the show. I would like to see her in Atlanta. I think.
Yeah. Let's get her in Atlanta and to fire up Ryan Howard.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There needs to be. We saw Kennedy Carter have the best season of her career thanks to whatever it was that Teresa Weatherspoon was doing. I think Ryan Howard can have a great season as well under Teresa Weatherspoon. Like, they need it, bro. She needs it. You talked about Alicia Gray last week being a potential top 10, top 15 player. Like, she could benefit from it as well. There's a lot in Atlanta that makes sense for Teresa Weatherspoon to be their next head coach, in my opinion.
I like that. I like let's get Teaspoon in Atlanta to get a battery in the back of Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard to get Alicia Gray's been fine. I need someone down there talking sense to Ryan Howard. It might as well be Teaspoon. I like the sound of that. I had ATL next to Teaspoon as well. I don't know about, like, I had these names down of all these different people. Like, I don't think it's going to be just natural shuffle. I mentioned Katie Smith in that clip. I've seen her name floating around. She should be getting a gig. I think once she gets an opportunity with the right group, of course, I think she would do her thing. I think Christy Sides could get picked up.
I do as well.
Pick up Christy Sides.
I do as well. I don't think Eric T-Balt's going to get picked up. I don't think he should get picked up.
I don't either.
And I don't think Tanisha Wright is going to get picked up either.
I don't either.
I do think Latricia Trammell is going to get picked up out of Dallas. I just kind of put the tweet up there. I'll put it back up. It's being reported that she might end up in Chicago.
Yeah.
That'll be an interesting one for sure. Not unfamiliar though. Would that be for her as far as having multiple talented post players, right? That's kind of the thing in Dallas right now. They have so many talented post players, so many talented bigs down there, and wings. She would fit right in, I think, in Chicago. It'd be certainly a difference between being coached by Teaspoon and then being coached by Latricia Trammell, but I think that she would fit there. I think
she's got the fire though. She's got the fire and the energy to coach an Angel Reese. Like she's got that.
I think the best job on the market right now is the LA Sparks job, considerably. It's not even close, right? When you have Rakia Jackson coming off the season that she had, when you have Cam Brink, obviously she's dealing with the ACL, but I imagine, will be back and healthy and ready to go by the time season tips off next summer, as well as the looming possibility of the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 draft, which means the looming possibility of adding Paige Beckers to that already dynamic duo. The LA Sparks have certainly the most attractive head coaching job. That is the job that I think whoever gets that job will be in the best position of these 7 teams to win a championship, I think. I know the Sun are the best of the 7 without a head coach right now, but as you and I talked about, the Connecticut Sun have the dubious distinction of having won the most games over a certain amount of time without having been to a WNBA, having won a championship. I think they're up to 112 games or something like that won over the last 6 or so years without a championship. And that's obviously going to continue into next season unless they can win a championship next season. But the Los Angeles Sparks, with that potential big 3, that head coach, whoever gets put into that position, whether it's Katie Smith, whether it's Lisa Leslie, whether it's one of these other coaches who've been fired in this cycle, going over there like a Christy Sides or whoever gets that job, I think would be in the best position to potentially win a championship within 3 years of being hired, if they're allowed to stay the full 3 years.
I mean, for these teams, I mean, Indiana, like who coaches these teams really matters. LA is in a great position to be really good, in a few years and over the next few years. Again, you think about which coach can like actually take a team over the hump. Like, LA is still going to be young over the next few years. So I don't know which coach will be the magic key, the perfect, key to like developing that kind of talent. But that's a big position in LA. Connecticut's a big conversation too, because a big part of their success has come from, like, a big part of their identity was what Stephanie White established there in the culture and in their play style. So like, who coaches Connecticut is because they had things to figure out even if Stephanie White was still their coach. And now that they're going with a different coach, they've got to hang on to that identity and that culture while still evolving. Because my biggest thing with them picking up Marina Mabrey helped with that evolution offensively and just in terms of their play style and what I've talked about with them a lot, with like really getting to a better place with just offensively, because they're known to be so great defensively. So Marina Mabrey was great personnel wise. I thought they had work to do even if Stephanie White was still their coach. So they have even more to figure out. That's going to be big for Connecticut. So they're not taking a step back. But LA is obviously the most attractive job. I really look forward to seeing what direction they go in for all the reasons you mentioned. They're going to be a popular team. You've got Cam Brink already, Rakia, you've got young stars, and everybody, people are pointing to Paige. People want Paige in LA. If that happens, you've got the young, hottest team in the league with a chance to, get in the playoffs and compete. But that's another one where I think a lot of these franchises want a certain kind of coach that is going to be their coach for the next, 5 to 8 years. I think just with attention growing and resources growing and star power growing, these GMs and owners are looking for like really particular coaches, not the usual ones, but, people that are able to kind of manage what's happening right now.
Last thing I'll say before we move on to some college hoops is, and the Mystics have a special place in my heart because I'm from DC. I'm very interested, especially to see who ends up with that job. That is another job that's interesting because it's a very young team with a lot of talent. You have a Shakira Austin, you got an Aaliyah Edwards. Obviously, they have 2 picks in the top 6 this upcoming draft. They have the 6th pick thanks to a trade with Atlanta. They can have anywhere from 2 to 4 based on how the lottery goes on the 17th of November. We're talking about a scenario where they can have any combination of 2 talented guards that they want, whether it's Olivia Miles and Azzi Fudd, whether like whoever it is. There's a lot of talent that can be brought into DC. The coach that comes to DC is going to be the one to set a new culture for that team. I think the most not shocking, but the most striking thing for me about the firing or the parting ways, if you will, of Eric Tebow as head coach is it wasn't just Eric Tebow that was let go. His dad, Mike Tebow, who was the head coach of the Mystics when they won their first championship in 2019, he's also no longer the general manager. So the Mystics are looking to bring in an entirely new culture with a very young basketball team that, when healthy, could make a lot of noise in the W as well. I'd like to see Kurt Miller come to DC and see what that would look like. I don't know if that would be the best fit, but of all the coaches available right now, I think again, like we're just waiting for the Stephanie White to Indiana announcement. I think we're also just waiting for the Latricia Trammell to Chicago announcement. And if I had to pick between Kurt Miller and Christy Sides to come coach this basketball team, I think I'd be a little bit more comfortable with Kurt Miller doing it because we've seen Kurt Miller work with young players before and kind of get the best out of them when they, in a way that fits as it relates to winning basketball. The other thing too for the Mystics is there is the looming potential of maybe Elena Delle Donne coming back. She probably won't. She's probably going to go to some other team, but she did take a year off from basketball, so it's unclear what her future looks like. The right coach coming to DC to fill that vacancy and the right GM as well could lure her back to DC where she finishes her career here instead of elsewhere. So that's another job that I think, for what it's worth, while not as attractive as, say, a Chicago Sky or a Los Angeles Sparks or even an Indiana Fever job, even though it's pretty much already locked up, still has its own pull factors to get someone to want to come be here and be the head coach of that squad, nonetheless. Let's switch gears now, Martin. You have 3 stories that you are specifically looking out for as it relates to the women's college hoop season. But before we get into that, we're going to toss it to a clip from when we had Hannah Hidalgo on the show a couple months ago.
Olivia's a great player, and obviously she's versatile. So I think all the guards that we have are very versatile. So whether they get the rebound and outlet it to me and I'm pushing, or Olivia's pushing and I'm running the 2, or Sony's pushing and running the 2, running the 3, like our guards are so interchangeable. And so that's what I mean. We're going to be so much faster because anybody can get the ball and push the ball up court. But Olivia, she's a very special player. Like, she's quick. She's very quick, and she sees the whole floor. And so whether she's looking in the stands, like somehow the ball's going to make its way over to you. She's a pass first guard, and she's very smart, obviously. So she knows the system. She knows who does what, and she just knows the game so well. And just kind of watching her play when we were going up and down during the season, or even right now working with her, I think she's special, and she's gotten so much better. I mean, I feel like people are going to be shocked.
Yeah, it's crazy that she even said that people will be shocked watching Olivia again. I won't be, because that is one of my predictions that I will be calling back to, I am sure, from over a year ago when I told people that this will be the best backcourt in women's college basketball. I don't think people are really ready for what potentially we're about to see with Olivia Miles and Hannah Hidalgo at Notre Dame this season, going up and down together. They may be 2 point guards, but first and foremost, they're 2 playmakers, and they're also 2 competitors. You heard Hannah allude to it a little bit more now, getting more time actually getting to hoop with Olivia. That girl is one of the most special passers I've ever seen. Her feel and vision of the floor is really second to none. And to have that kind of table setter, and she pushes the ball in transition. She believes in running, and that's going to work well with playing with Hannah, who also believes in running. Like, just having another playmaker of that level alongside Hannah, the damage that Hannah did as a freshman last year was great experience for her, I think, as a scorer. And just feeling out the game in her spots. But that's my first thing to watch for, is how Olivia Miles and Hannah Hidalgo really take Notre Dame to another level from the perimeter. Of course, I still think their potential will lie in their front court and what they're doing on the wing. We know they've got Sony Citron. So the three of them, Maddie Westbeld, I mean, the four of them, they can do damage. I still think their potential lies in how productive and strong they can be inside against all the great teams, starting with South Carolina, of course, with all the great size that those teams have. But from a guard play perspective, we're going to see some of the best basketball out of Notre Dame this year that we've seen in some time with Olivia Miles and Hannah Hidalgo. I truly feel like that's going to be special. My next thing to watch for, Sarah Strong, the top player in the country coming into the season at UConn. Really looking forward to seeing how she can help take them over the hump, even as a freshman. From what I've seen, she's a big girl who can shoot it, who can put it on the floor. Really looks like a more of a dual forward than like a post player, but she looks like the type that can be impact player right away, just from what I've seen on highlights online. But apparently she's the real deal, and looking forward to seeing how she can help out Paige and KK Arnold and those players. But I think that's going to be when we look at each year, we're seeing, impact freshmen really making a name for themselves every year. And I'm pretty sure Sarah Strong will be one of those, but UConn needs it. And the big storyline with UConn is Paige trying to get a natty before she gets out of there. One of the bigger stories could be, and probably should be, Sarah Strong. If she's playing impact basketball right away, that's scarier and give them a better chance to get back to the Final Four this year. Third storyline, last one, third thing to watch for. It's hard to pick three. There's so many things to think about and to consider, and that I'm excited to watch for. I decided to focus a little bit on Maryland. I mentioned it when things were happening, but they've got some major transfers that they brought in. They really changed the whole look of their team, but the kind of transfers they brought in are going to make them really interesting in the Big Ten, and in a Big Ten that is totally different this year, that has the likes of UCLA and USC. So the Big Ten is really just, that conference is something to watch for this year. You've got Juju there now. You've got UCLA there now. So a lot of those matchups are going to get really interesting when you look at, the dismantling of the Pac-12 and adding teams to the Big Ten. But Maryland in the Big Ten, I think, is going to be a team to watch for. Kayleen Schmeichel went there from Rutgers. She was Big Ten Freshman of the Year last year. They picked up Christina Dulce out of Villanova, Amari DeBerry, who was at UConn, Saylor Poffenbarger. Like, they brought in real players that are going to do real damage at Maryland right away. Good size on the kind of players they have, a lot of different skill sets. So I look forward to seeing what Brenda Frese can do over there at Maryland in the Big Ten, with a little more loaded Big Ten. But I think Maryland's going to be an interesting story to watch for throughout the year.
And I have the pleasure of going to Maryland basketball games this season to watch them playing in all these Big Ten games. I too have an eye on Maryland. I will say, though, also, to your point about Hannah and Olivia, I hate to root against a player that has graced us with her presence on Protect Our Queens, but I think it's just the bias in me. I can't in good conscience walk lockstep with you on the idea that Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles have the best backcourt in the country this season. Doesn't mean they're not going to be, because they very well probably will be, but I have some strong opinions about who the best backcourt in the country is going to be, and we're going to talk about that in just a second.
Strong opinion. It's pretty obvious. It was Malaysia and Pow Pow. It should be who you think it is. I mean, that's your team. So I think it's anyone who knows you knows who it is. It ain't no strong opinion, and we know what it is.
Strong opinion. It's a strong opinion.
It's a conventional opinion for you. That ain't no strong opinion.
It's a strong. I feel strongly about this opinion.
Well, how about this for strong? Last year, you said Malaysia Fulwiley and Tessa Thompson would be the best sophomore guard duo in the country. So I don't know how that. I don't know if
her name's Tessa Johnson.
Tessa Johnson. Sorry.
Yeah, I do. Why not? Why not?
Well,
We have
who
great
is it?
guards
Who
in
is it?
South
Is it
Carolina,
Malaysia
bro.
and Pow Pow, or is it Malaysia?
Well, these are two different conversations. We're talking about the best sophomore guard duo, not the same as the best.
All right.
Those are two different conversations to be had. Two completely different conversations to be had.
That is true.
And both can be true. Both can be true. But yeah, shout out. We got a lot of great guards down here. And so I'm saying down here like I live in South Carolina. There's a lot of great guards in South Carolina. Lots of great guards in South Carolina. That was great though. You know what? I didn't think you were going to show some love to Maryland there. I didn't think that'd be happening. I thought we'd get a little bit of a Kiyomi at Rutgers thing going on there, and I thought you might slip that in there into your three. I'll be honest there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching for so many things. I can't.
You are.
I had to pick one. There's so many.
That's true.
things
That's true. There's a lot to look forward to. Yeah, there's lots to look forward to. Well, we kind of alluded to it. Let's toss it back now to a clip of when we had Coach Gillette Law on the show, and then I'll run through my three as well before we get out of here.
Is the model going forward for the foreseeable future to build these kind of stacked, deep rosters that know from the forward to the center to the guard to the wing? Is it because I'm thinking of once he said Maddie McDaniel, I said, wait, hold on. And then Joyce Edwards, and I'm like, wait, so Papa coming back, Malaysia? I'm going down the roster. I'm like, so is this the model now? You can tell us. Is this what we're looking at from that here on out?
My job is to make my boss, Dawn Staley, sit down across her legs and be able to pick, who we need. We want to win championships at the championship. So we're just trying to get quality players in here. We're trying to get a quality team, a good product that we can constantly put out there and display. And I keep telling Dawn, we're not going to be here that much longer. So we might as well go ahead and try to win as many championships as we possibly can.
Back it up.
So I love the way it feels. I love the way it does. So we're just trying to get players in here that want to win championships and want to, get prepared for the W.
Just as a spoiler, there is a theme and with my three, and you'll see it very quickly. The first thing that I am looking forward to is Joyce Edwards. Joyce Edwards in South Carolina's 2 exhibition games this season averaged just about 20 points, 12 boards, 4 assists. She shot 64% from the field. I'm going to go on a limb, right? It's not even a limb. I'm just going to say it right now. I think Joyce Edwards is going to be National Freshman of the Year. I think she's that good. I think she showed that she has that much talent and that much capability on the basketball court to be the best freshman in the country. And I fully expect Joyce, a couple of days ago, she talked about how Dawn Staley has been encouraging her to play a lot more freely. It's a very common theme with Dawn Staley and her freshmen, keeping them comfortable and keeping them playing free, but also being very locked in and in tune with what's happening on the court in real time in games. She came out and admittedly she was a little bit nervous, but when she was able to sit down and just watch the game kind of opened up, we saw her game open up in those instances as well. I fully expect Joyce Edwards to be the best freshman in the country this season, and I will be watching and keeping a very keen eye on that. The second thing, in that same interview, when we talked with Coach Law, one thing that I think came up pretty early on, and something I was adamant about talking about, is what the future for South Carolina in the post would look like without Camila Cardoso being there. Obviously, Camila Cardoso left South Carolina last season to declare for the draft. She's now in Chicago alongside Angel Reese. Down low, we talked about in that episode, we have Adele Tack. You also have Sinai Fagan. I think both of them bring very different things to the table. I think they complement each other very well. I don't think either of them individually are going to by themselves replace the production offensively and defensively that Camila Cardoso provided while she was in South Carolina. But I do think, and we have seen, especially with Sinai Fagan, whether it's when Camila Cardoso was either unavailable via injury or via foul trouble, we did see her last season in that national championship run step up and fill that role quite handily. I'm anticipating a lot of instances throughout the course of the season, especially when the matchup is favorable, where we have Adele Tack and Sinai Fagan on the court at the same time. And that's what I'm most interested for. I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like, how they play off of each other, and what that means as it relates to South Carolina competing for and hopefully winning their second championship in a row. And then we kind of just talked about it. Not only do we have the best guard group in the country, but I do think we're going to have the best backcourt in the country. Malaysia Fawali was an exceptional freshman last season. I think she's going to be that much better as a sophomore this season. Tahina Paopao led the country in three-point percentage last season. She picked up seemingly right where she left off this season in exhibition games. She shot 63% from three-point range last season. She finished the season shooting 47% from three, which led the country. As I said, I fully expect, whether it's Malaysia Fawali and Tahina Paopao, whether it's Tahina Paopao and Raven Johnson, whatever combination of guards it is, I expect South Carolina to boast the best backcourt duo in the country. There's a lot of the players in South Carolina in the backcourt, they complement each other so well, but they're also very capable on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. We know what Raven Johnson did to Caitlin Clark in the national championship game, and how important that was for her to have that comeback season and really put her stamp on what was a revenge season and a revenge tour for her. I expect her to come out just as hot this season, be just as great defensively and just an even better offensively than she was last season. So yeah, I know it was all biased. I only talk about South Carolina. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, but I have a keen eye, right? I'll be honest. I'm a little bit hurt. One of my teams could not make history with a third championship in a row. So now we're switching to college and I'm all in. I'm chips cashed in, middle of the table. I'm fully expecting the South Carolina Gamecocks to win a second straight national championship. And so all of my attention will be spent watching Gamecock women's basketball this season. Not literally all of it. I'll watch other stuff, but that's where I'm locked into the most. More than normal, I'll say. More than normal.
Yeah, gonna be interesting. Dawn said that they're better. Well, she had said like maybe a month ago, or it was still the off season, but that she feels like they're better at this point this year than they were last year. Yep. I do have Joyce Edwards has looked from just a little bit I've seen. Didn't watch full preseason stuff personally, sure, but saw some stuff out there where she's looking very active. And they can plug her right in to do some of the things that they like to do with, playing inside. That she doesn't, I mean, she's not a 6'7" like a Camilla, but I think she looks to be around like 6'3". I don't know, but she clearly has a knack for finishing inside and doing the things that they like to do. That being said, I do look forward to seeing what Malaysia is doing, because I expect to see her with a little more responsibility. I mentioned a lot last year how she was kind of their secret weapon. She barely got 10 shots off a game. She came off the bench and she was their most talented perimeter player. And I think already from, again, just seeing, social media nowadays, I know you can't take everything in just from watching highlights and stuff, but I have a special gift to be able to do things. So when I watch things, I watch a little differently, but I can already tell and sense that Malaysia is being given a little more freedom, a little more responsibility as the most talented perimeter player. They do have 4 very effective, very playable, very effective and skilled guards that will contribute to winning. But I look to see Malaysia really asserting herself as one of the better players in the country this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see, in about 6-7 months, we'll be looking at South Carolina raise another banner.
Running the table again, you think? Calling it now?
I don't think we're going to run the table. I don't think we'll go undefeated. I do think we'll drop one.
Okay, just one.
But just one. Yeah, I don't. Just one. Yeah. I mean, no, but I don't foresee an instance where. Again, to your point, Dawn did say that this team is going to be, or is already at this point, better than we were at this point last season. I just don't know if they're going to run the table. Texas, I think, is going to be a good basketball team this season. We have to play them twice. Obviously, with them being in the SEC, we might drop a game to them. We have to play UCLA. Like there are some teams on there that kind of give me a little bit of pause. We do have a game against UConn this season as well. So there's certainly opportunity where we can drop maybe a game or two here or there. But when it's all said and done, when the dust settles, I do fully expect the South Carolina Gamecocks to win another championship this season. And if I were a betting man, I would put some money. Well, I'm kind of a betting man, but I'd be willing to put a hefty amount on it.
Should be another fun one. Games start up next week.
Yeah,
time to get after it.
Game starts on Monday. It's always a pleasure to talk women's basketball with my guy Martin Soares, and it's always a pleasure to have all of you guys who are watching with us live tune in with us each and every week. Thank you guys for watching. As always, please feel free to tap in the comments, whether you're watching live or watching on the playback. Follow us on Instagram at Protect Our Queens _. Follow us on Twitter at PO Queens _. There will not be a show on Tuesday next week because next Tuesday is election night. A date for a show next week is still to be determined. Once we have that date, of course, we will let all you guys know so you guys can come right back up and tap in with us as we talk about what I imagine will be some very early season observations based on the first couple days of college hoops. So for my guy, Martin Sories of Basketball Society, this is Marcus of Protect Our Queen signing off. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, you enjoy yourselves some women's basketball. I hate that it does that.